getting a double mastectomy, and then they're fucking 18 years old and realize that the fucking cult fucked them over in their bodies. That's what people are fucking angry about.
You always do that thing though where you have this like grand fucking design and this crazy thing, but you've tried to pull this to this to this to this to this,
You absolutely
and you
have, yeah.
always
It's
do
not
that.
my
You
fault that you
can't
can't follow
fucking
me, honey.
stop.
No, we did
No,
follow
no, no,
you.
sweetie,
We were
sweetie.
she was pointing out how she was following you from this
Yeah,
inane
yeah,
point to
you
some
do it
grand
every single
conspiracy.
time.
On Saturday night, a gunman opened fire in a LGBTQ club in Colorado Springs. As of now, 5 people have died, with another 25 injured. The club was hosting a drag show that night. The day after was the Trans Day of Remembrance. At the moment, no motive has been established. Assuming this is a hate crime, do you think that the likelihood of this tragedy taking place was increased by the negative rhetoric and policies being pushed against the community? Are conservative media outlets and politicians to blame for this? Are more tragedies like this inevitable if this negative societal trend continues? Yeah, I know you guys have all heard about this as big news of the weekend. Unfortunately, we had another mass shooting in America, but not surprising, of course. And it seems to be that this person was targeting gay individuals. So we're just gonna go off. We're just gonna, because we don't have an established motive, something out there. But we're gonna go off the assumption that it was. And this follows a long trend. And so, but we have a lot of rhetoric that's been said over this past few years, right? That's decidedly anti-LGBTQ. So, like, is that to blame for this, right? Again, assuming it's a hate crime. Yeah. So, we'll go to Lactoid before we do that. Anuria, thank you for 300 bits. Guys, we're 97% of level 1 hype train, right? Get us over. Get us level 2 hype train. Subs to channel, give bits, give subs to help us out. Help us get to level 2, level 3 hype train. That's how I bring these people together. All right. But for man, Lactoid, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so like you said, we don't know why it happened, but assuming this is a hate crime, it's just as awful as it is given what we know now. Mass shootings are always awful, and 5 people died with another 25 injured regardless. Nobody good encourages mass shootings, and I don't think anybody important is doing that or doing anything remotely close to that. That said, just because some people do awful things doesn't mean some reasonable critiques cannot be levied. For example, the classic example, Steve Scalise was shot at a baseball game, arguably because of Bernie Sanders' rhetoric. Does that mean that Bernie is to blame, despite the fact that he has not advocated for people to go out and shoot people? Obviously not. Obviously, Bernie is not to blame for that. Is he allowed to continue to advocate for his policies? Obviously, he is. Obviously, he should be able to. We cannot base continued censorship of reasonable critiques off a sick insinuation that this critique is responsible or comparable to psychopaths shooting at the drag show.
Much fun. Razor Sharp Gaming, thank you for gifting that sub. 2 subs total for you. We are 11% of level 2 hype train. 89% left. Can we get to a level 3 hype train? 4.5 minutes on the clock. Sub to the channel, give bits or give subs or resub, all that good stuff. It does help us out. Use your Amazon Prime Gaming on the channel, on the community to help us out. Get us to a level 3 hype train. It's how we pay for all of this. Thanks so much. Okay, let's go to Scott.
Yeah, so I don't pretend to know the mind of a man that like kidnapped his mother and landlord with a fake bomb and weapons a year ago. And for whatever reason, all the charges were dropped. I mean, maybe there was extenuating circumstances. Like, obviously, we're dealing with an insane person. It's kind of typically what happens anytime you're dealing with mass shootings, right? The absolute kind of limit of craziness within our society. The idea that rhetoric in the culture war is to blame for this is the idea of second order effects or third order effects from a consequentialist framework. And the issue with that is that once you start, I mean, the issue is consequentialism, but the real issue is that like once you start engaging in second and third order effects, then like anything can be the fault of anything, right? So, for example, if the rhetoric from libs of TikTok had some effect on this guy, right? And we find out that like he was an avid fan of libs of TikTok and he just like watched every video 30 times. And like that's like what really like drove him over the edge. Then we could just as easily say all of the people that made those videos that libs of TikTok posted should be banned because they caused it, right? Because you're just adding other effects down the stream. The only way that someone can be directly responsible rhetoric wise is that it needs to be a direct call to action towards violence, or they need to like facilitate the crime in some way, right? Like know that this person wants to shoot up someplace and be like, here's money so you can buy guns to do this or something, right? Like they have to be directly involved or they have to be making direct calls for action. So I really don't understand this idea that like the culture war of individuals like leads to some spewing level of hatred, et cetera, because like you could do the same with the both, right? Like if you want to do that, then like you could basically say, you know, teachers that want to that want to teach transformative social emotional learning are the reason that this shooting occurred. And the last thing I want to add is the politics of this and the way that the media really kind of picks and chooses what stories for sensationalist purposes to utilize for political advantage, right? This story is blowing up. And, you know, this is somebody that, of course, should have been captured by red flag laws. And this is a person that is, you know, attacking the LGBTQ community. And yet, this same weekend in Chicago, 20 people were shot and 2 teenagers died. Like, this is just what Chirac is every fucking day. And it's not a news story because it doesn't fit the specific narrative that we want to say, which is that the hateful right wingers are spewing hate speech. And that's why this shit is happening.
Thank you so much. Help us out with this hype train. Thank you, Dutch Process. Help us get to level 3 hype train. We have less than 30 seconds on the clock. Someone help save this hype train. Subs to channel, give bits or give subs. How we power this community, how we keep it up and running. But thank you for the people who've been helping out so far. Okay. Let's go to our friend Aiko.
So about once a year, I talk to my debate kids about the miracle of the political system that we have and the fact that we don't settle all of our disputes with war the way we used to. I talk about the Eumenides, which is an ancient Greek play, which is about the invention of the rule of law, which was Athena coming down and handing it to us sort of as a miracle. And it's all about the revenge cycle of a man coming back home from war and then being killed by his wife, and then his wife then in revenge being killed by his son, and then his son was then being pursued by the Furies, and that cycle of violence had to end because we were able to because Athena comes down and invents the law courts and invents essentially politics. And that becomes an alternative, politics becomes an alternative to violence in that Greek mythology. And I think it's a miracle of our modern age that we ended 300 years of religious war and developed things like secularism in North America, and we managed to really stop that cycle of violence through the political process. And when I look at what happened to Paul Pelosi or what happened to Steve Scalise, to me, it's not about who gets, what politicians are at most risk or what marginalized groups are at most risk because of political violence. It's the fact that increasingly, no matter what side you're on, the fact that violence is present, that's the problem, and that's what we need to back off of. Now, with regards to this specific incident, there are more political implications than just the ones that we've talked about. It turns out his grandfather is a Republican assemblyman out of California by the name of Randy Vopel, and he was also present at January 6th. So take from at the Capitol. Here he is with his little red hat on, and I just we need to, I think, step back and ask ourselves, whatever side of the political aisle you're on, why is it that we can't make this connection between violent rhetoric and actual violence without necessarily having to say that you're only you only have to be concerned about this if you're on one side of that political aisle. I think that pretty clearly it's not a coincidence that in a time where queer Americans are being talked about as if they're a danger to society, that people are actually going out and treating them as if they're a danger to society. And I think that I don't think it's a coincidence. Certainly, we see these sorts of attacks on an increasing level. We had the Pulse attack before,
Sorry,
which
I just gotta
created a lot of
interrupt
yeah.
you for a bit. Guys, we're a level 3 hype train because of our kind friend Doobie gifting 10 subs. Thank you, Doobie, for being so great and kind to this community. We're a level 3 hype train. Less than 2 minutes left on the clock. 36% done. Some amount left. My math skills aren't working right now. It's fine. But help out the channel by helping us continue this hype train. Get to a level 4 hype train. Wouldn't that be amazing, right? Sub to the channel, gift bits, or gift subs if you want to see us up and running. If you want to continue this content, now is the time. Subs to the channel, gift bits, or gift subs. We have Amazon Prime, Prime Gaming, usually 1 free sub per month on the channel, on the community to keep this hype train going, to support us, to make sure that Scott gets to come back here and spread the good word of ANCAP, right? To you all, right? You're doing yourselves a favor, honestly, really. Thank you. So go ahead, finish what you were going to say. And less than a minute left, guys. Let's help see if we can save the hype train. Sub to channel, keep it up. Go ahead.
So there was also another incident where 2 people arguing over politics, one of them shot the other, and I think it was in that case a Democrat who shot the Republican over, and that got a lot of attention as well. And so I'm just saying that this sort of political violence can be avoided by having conversations like these, like the ones that we're able to have on Prime's panel, where instead of just trying to say that we shouldn't be able to listen to certain points of view, that we should be able to talk them out.
Well, absolutely, right? And if you sub to the channel, you're basically saving lives. That's what Aiko just said, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
The mass shootings in America, that's your fault for not subbing to this channel, not contributing. All right, let's go to our friend Sprouticus.
So, I'm not really gonna I apologize. I'm not really gonna get like real deep into this actual situation because the facts haven't come out yet. And it's really important that facts come out before you start talking specifically about events like this. So I highly encourage the rest of the panel to talk about this theoretically and not the actual events, because as shown in certain shootings recently, it takes the facts a while to come out. Even when you think they did come out, there are oftentimes things that are wrongly reported. But with that being stated, I do not think that I don't necessarily think that the people that are espousing political positions are at fault for the shooter. I do believe though is that it's the divisiveness of the country, and extremely how we've become tribes and we just hate the other tribe. The other tribe is the enemy, and at all costs the enemy must be destroyed. And I believe that we need to drop that. We need to have something that makes us all understand we're American first, and then we'll deal with the issues we have as like a whole. But this tribalism that we've gotten into, this divisiveness that we've gotten into as a country, is only hurting us, and we're only seeing the symptoms.
All right, Corey.
Yeah, I'll probably be short again, just because I think iCal pretty much. I couldn't have said it better than iCal. And so I echo pretty much all the exact same sentiments. The other thing that I will add is that I think this like largely mirrors like pretty much like the homophobia that occurred in, not that homophobia doesn't exist currently, but I think it was like pretty much like at its peak in 80s, 90s, and Republican support for same-sex marriage is like slowly ticking upwards. It's now at like 44% ish, depending on the poll. And one of I think the turning points, although there was probably many of, was the unfortunate case of Matthew Shepard, where it's like this violent, horrific case of like this teenager like pretty much like tortured and murdered, and that was a little bit of a tipping point. And it seems like, unfortunately, I hope it doesn't have to come to that, but it seems like it has to take like a horrific act of violence for the rhetoric to change. As iCow sort of pointed out, I don't think it's a coincidence that given the rhetoric, you have this type of acts of violence. And I'll leave it there for now.
Much, right? And if you want to get on Aiko's level, right, you just have to somehow incorporate an ancient myth to your opening statement. Then,
True. I don't have the wisdom of iCal.
right?
Yeah.
I'm
Let's
just
go-
old.
Let's go to friend Stabby.
Hi guys. I think one of the things I wanted to share today, if I can, with your chat, is I'm atheist now, but I came from a very far right wing cult. One of the things we were prepping for, like we were MAGA before MAGA was cool, was the slaughter of the homosexuals and the feminazis. They weren't feminazis yet, but like all the feminists were bad. And one of the things that we did was we were always so afraid and insanely angry about things. And so if we ourselves had something like that, like I had said earlier today, I saw a poster of Gillian Anderson on a bus and I was attracted to her and immediately thought I was going to hell. I wanted to share, since we're assuming this is a hate crime and it's being investigated as a hate crime, we don't have all the facts. I do want to share something that can help all of us. There's this astoundingly wonderful human being. Her name is Susan Friedman. She is a Christian. And if you are going through something really hard right now, I come from Colorado Springs. I lived there while I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. Jesus Christ, that's where my first base. When I was stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado. Too many bases I've been stationed at, guys. I remember how fucking terrible it was, and like how you could feel like this was on purpose or anything like that. But this woman helps everywhere. Definitely you guys can check out this link right here. She will help you with a crisis of the faith. She will help you if you're feeling completely targeted, especially in a city like Colorado Springs. And I do think our rhetoric has something to do with it. I think that when all of the panels were about, Twitter lefties talking about, putting people on the wall, things like that, we were talking about it. And we do need to talk about this rhetoric because we're fellow Americans and it's utterly ridiculous that this continues to happen. So yes, I do think the rhetoric is your responsibility and my responsibility. I want to make sure that we can help with that. I'm sorry if I'm a little quiet. I'm seeing some of the comments. It's just that my boiler is still fucking around with me, so I'm just running through all the tests, and I'll be here for like another 10 minutes. But I'll try to stay quiet until I'm back up in my room. Sorry, guys.
Not a problem. Our friend Doobie. And Doobie, once again, thank you for being online and supporting the channel.
I think that if there is blame to be placed, I mean, other than the person who actually like carried this out, it'd be on the transgendered ideologues and gender abolition ideologues that have made it publicly known repeatedly that they are in fact targeting your children. They do want your kids to be trans. They do want your kids to be gender fluid, right? They think this is wonderful, and they're going to teach it to your kids in school, even if you don't like it, even if you don't want it, and if you say anything bad about it, you're a bigot. And now they're gonna try to politicize this tragedy and make so you can't even criticize their fucked up ideology at all. They're the ones who are to blame for this. Because if they stop going after the fucking kids, I feel like less people would give a fuck about this.
So thank you, Doobie, for once again making it complicated to be your friend. All right, let's open to the panel.
Are you coming out as trans, PrimeCayes?
Yeah, yes, exactly that. But look, I'll start us off. Look, I think that it's obviously that there is some level of well, I don't want to say culpability yet, right? But at the very least, the rhetoric that we see is it's not simply people stating, well, I have a difference of opinion with trans individuals, right? Or the LGBTQ community. No, they're saying that, as Doobie helped point out, that they're groomers, right? That they are coming for your children and going to do something vaguely sexual to them, or like chop off their nuts or whatever the fuck. I don't know. I have no idea what's in these people's heads. But in any case, right, what's being placed there are basically turning these people into the trans individuals into expendables, right? Turning them into some sort of vermin, right? An enemy of the state, and there's only one thing to do with that enemy.
Well, I think to Doobie's point a little bit, one of the problems that TRAs have is that they consistently claim to speak for the trans community. right? And I don't and again, I'm not fucking laying blame on any of these people. Like I said before, I want to make it very clear. The only people that I blame is the individual. I know his name, but I'm not going to say his name. Because fuck him. I don't want his name to be I want everyone to forget his goddamn name. But the individual in question, as well as anybody who specifically made direct actionable calls to violence that inspired this person or gave resources to this person, knowingly that they would commit that crime. No one else is involved in this. That being said, I do think that there is a problem within TRAs where they regularly say that this is what trans people want, this is what trans people believe. And what and I have found, because I've spoken to a ton of trans people and detrans people, right? You know, I've interviewed Buck Angel and Tula Bar and Shapeshifter, and you know, I've spoken with Chloe Cole and Blair White. I talk with this community a lot and debate against TRAs a lot. And the thing is that you'll see people like, you know, I won't name a name on here, but I think we'll all know, right? Where they'll be like, is there a trans genocide? And the moment you're like, we're like, well, I don't think it's that, right? Your gate kept out. And like, this has happened to Zonia several times. An actual trans person has been like yelled at and called a horrible person because like they don't fit the narrative. And so to maybe the psychotic or just to a lot of people, what ends up happening, and the right does this too with the groomers thing, is that the language isn't teachers that are teaching transformative social emotional learning, CASEL, NSES, UNESCO. These are the institutions and problems. TRAs are a problem. Instead, it becomes a blanket term for trans people. When I think the overwhelming majority of trans people just want to fucking pass. They're not gender abolitionists, and they just want to fucking live their life and live as in a gender or in a role or an identity that they're comfortable in. And they're roped into this culture war by nature of their existence and identity, being in this tug of war between two people. And I lay that blame at both the right and the left.
I can agree with you there.
I didn't realize that was going to be a showstopper. Like,
Yeah, I know. Anyone else?
Like Prime, when you're saying like that, when you're levying criticism, like some of that, I think the reasonable critiques are like, you know, and I'm, you know, Doobie has brought it up, I think seriously in the past, which is, you know, the sort of like the pseudo exotic dancing that we saw, and you know that we obviously had the panel once in like the giant tits.
Yeah,
right?
Drag your kids to drag or something like that.
Yeah, drag your kids to Pride.
Yeah.
And then you had like the teacher with like just like
there's thousands of incidents.
Humans, yeah, all these incidents. Like, Prime, you agree that like we can criticize those events without contributing to like such a horrific action as this, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Right. Yeah. So like what specific rhetoric are you? Are you just referring to like what Doobie just said, or like what are you sort of referring to when you're talking about like the rhetoric that's contributing to this?
Well, yeah, the grooming rhetoric, absolutely. That's definitely we can start there. There's the rape allegations, right? Like a man is going to be in a bathroom with a woman or a man in a dress, and he's going to attack her. The things that we're seeing are all the same things we saw like a decade, 15 years ago to the LGBT community, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, exactly that, right?
And have gay people in men's locker rooms, like
yeah, right? Like your tender buttholes won't be safe.
This has been my biggest problem with the right, is that what and I hate to use a Marxian term here, but the right tends to be very reactionary, right? The left has been pushing critical theory in all of its schools, critical legal studies, critical race theory, critical gender theory, right? Into our school, into our education system, into our media, in a lot of places. And what the right does is, instead of doing like what people like James Lindsay have been doing, right? Like doing the work and trying to understand the philosophy, trying to understand where this comes from, why it's pernicious, and like recognize it when it rears its head and stop that indoctrination. What ends up happening is that it's so overwhelming to a large group of people that don't understand the philosophy at all. And instead, they just kind of react with, leave my kids the fuck alone. You're all fucking evil. And it's like, there's a lot of evil here, right? But it has names and it has individual actors. And like, you know what I mean? And so like, this has been, I think, a big problem, I think, in terms of the messaging of the right, is like, I hope that they wake up to the actual philosophy, because that's the only way you're going to stop it. Because if you just keep freaking out about it in general, you're going to feel isolated, alone, and scared, and feel like they're coming after you and your children. And your only recourse is going to be either like fascism from the state or political violence. And I think it's really important that that a lot of right wingers that see this shit going on in their schools like start to educate themselves on the philosophy of this, and educate themselves on UNESCO and SEL and all of the institutions and what it is that they're actually trying to do, so that you can recognize it and stop it to the best of your ability.
Can I just add real quick? There have been charges filed in this case, so it's not. There are at least some indications as to what the motivation might be. We've got 5 charges of murder, but also 5 charges of bias motivated crime, which is what they.
Yeah, but we don't know yet.
Just because it's charged doesn't mean that doesn't mean they have the facts to put it up in court.
Yeah, also Vasquez has been very, very, very limited with the details that he's let out. Like, he hasn't even said the make and model of the firearm. He's just said, and like he said that it's an AR-15 style at one point. He said assault rifle style, and another one he said Colt AR-15 style.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck is that even mean?
I
And then I
saw
realized they're
that.
just talking about the I realized they're just talking about the A4, which is in that style. And I was like, apparently some gun enthusiasts say that shit. And I was like, all right, whatever, fuck it.
Yeah,
But yeah, so he hasn't been very forthcoming with the details. Like and we don't even know for certain that this individual is the same individual that we only have like media reports. Like, they're pretty certain that this is the same person that kidnapped his mother and landlord via a bomb threat and threatening her life. And then the bomb squad had to evacuate the neighborhood, and for whatever reason, those charges were all dropped.
Yeah, so I think that it's I would agree that the right is reactionary. Well, I would absolutely agree with that. The right is a reactionary.
I mean, they're still catching up to same-sex. Like, they're still processing that. Like I said, the Republican
They're
support.
mostly on board with that.
But
Look, what's Republican support?
12
Look it
votes
up.
out of 50 in the Senate. So I don't know if they're mostly on board.
Look up.
I never
Lactoid.
hear it.
Lactoid. Look up Republican support. Just like
I know. When you ask them, like what percent of you support it, right? But like, when it comes time to like actually put any kind of political capital into any issue, the Republicans are never going to put any capital into
I guarantee you.
same-sex marriage again.
I guarantee you, if someone ran for the Republican office and said they were going to do away with gay marriage and stuff like that, then that would be suicide
They'd
for the
lose the
candidate.
primary.
They wouldn't be nominated as the Republican nominee.
Lactoid, what did you make of Justice Thomas's comments in the Dobbs decision, where he specifically said same-sex marriage is next?
So he referenced a couple cases, Griswold and Obergefell, and from a legal philosophy, I think Justice Thomas was probably the only consistent justice. Alito was better. So I mean, I think we've talked about this. I've talked about this before. I agree with the Dobbs decision in terms of its legal reasoning, and it's very easy to see where Justice Thomas is going. That's different. That's different than like a political will to try to remove it, right? Saying that something shouldn't be like legally protected is not the same. Under like constitutionally protected is not the same thing as saying, well, we should just get rid of it. I think that I think right now they're codifying same-sex marriage, and it's going to be successful because
it has been. It's been signed.
Yeah.
That's what I talked about when I said 12 votes. So it got 12 Republican votes in the Senate for codification, which is less than a quarter of the Republican senators. So it doesn't seem as if they're trying to send a message as a party that and McConnell also voted against it. So
Yeah, but
as the leader of
the
the party,
problem is
Why
the problem is that you're assuming that this is like default bigotry against the LGBT community, when for most of them it's about the sanctity of marriage, and like many of them would support civil unions or think that the government should be out of it, etc. Like it's not that radical or even bigoted of an approach for a Christian to think that marriage should be what marriage is traditionally about based off of their religious values. That doesn't mean that they necessarily want to discriminate against against gay people, right? Like the government never should have been involved in this to begin with.
And by the way, Obergefell was not a good legal decision, but that's a whole different argument.
Go ahead, Stabby.
So first of all, if you guys, I'm having a very bad day. If you guys want to make me feel better, you have to donate to Prime, like bits and shit. Like just do it so that I can feel better about tonight. Okay. My boiler is working. It's getting hot in my house, so yay. But secondly, Scott, I actually wanted to ask you something about that. Having come from a right-wing past, a very religiously right-wing past, wouldn't how would we ask the right to be less reactionary? I feel like they're partially reactionary. I remember how I felt. I remember what they were selling me, and I remember what we were supposed to be feeling and what they yelled at me for when I didn't feel it. And there's a level of that reactionary behavior that is somewhat enforced and more than just a little encouraged. Is there a way we can actually reach out to right-wing people like me, and what I used to be, and go, well, hold on, here's what we need to know, without making them think like you're asking them to adhere to progressive positions? I do know that when I was leaving my faith, one of the things that helped me, I wish I'd met Susan Freed. I really do, because I'd probably still be spiritual in some way if I'd met her in time. But one of the things is that somebody told me wanting to read it isn't bad. Bad things can't just come from a book. It's what you do with it. And that changed everything for me. And so I stopped feeling guilty about reaching out for more information. Is there something similar to that you would recommend?
So I don't know what the hell you would do to people in a religious cult. You know what I mean? Like to the extreme, right? Like, I mean, like, I don't know that I would have
Unreachable,
the,
basically.
right. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they're unreachable. I'm just saying, like, I don't know that I would have like the expertise to be able to deal with like that pocket. But in terms of the right in general, I think the thing is that left wingers need to understand why is the right reactionary. And the reason that the right is reactionary is that the right tends to be live and let live. So long, listen, there's a big caveat, a very big caveat. So long as they don't feel like whatever their traditional values that they hold are under attack in some capacity. So your typical right winger, right? Not the super hardcore religious right, but like your typical person that votes Republican and says I'm a conservative. They don't really care what the government does, but if they feel like the institution of the family or the church or their children or certain core values that they hold, right? Or sacredity, like the American flag, right? Understanding like the moral philosophy of them. The moment that they feel that those are under attack is the moment that they involve themselves. And so they tend to like be uninvolved, not really paying attention to what's going on in that regard, because they're more concerned with raising their kids. They're more concerned with like living a good life or their job or their church or whatever it is that they're doing in their life. And then the moment they feel like their kids are under attack, their values are under attack, and then they react to those. And so the only way that I see this through is as the right loses its religion, they have to stop embracing a consequentialist framework, and they have to stop clinging so hard to some of like the foundational like religious values that they have, but without any foundation for it, and instead embrace liberty and modernity and freedom and like being able to do that. The problem is when those values actually are under attack and their freedom actually is under attack, I don't know that being reactionary in most cases is necessarily bad.
I would like to point out that I don't think that when your kids are under attack, the right wing is like super protective. I think that that's a publicized thing. Definitely something we're being encouraged to see politically. It didn't do anything to stop them from going to churches when it was endemic and everywhere. It didn't stop my cult, which was marrying little girls off to old men. I don't think it's exactly about child health.
I don't know.
I don't think your cult's
I don't know.
representative
I don't
of the
know.
right.
Yeah, about to say, I don't know if your cult is what we would see as like the
Well,
right.
no, not just my
So-
cult. Wait, not just my cult. The
milquetoast
Catholic
right-wing
fucking
cult.
church. the
I
fucking
understand that,
Catholic
but you can
Church.
still go to church just like you can still go to the grocery store.
Right, but you can't. No, my point is that I don't think it's just about protection of their children, because it wasn't enough to protect their children from these other things. So,
If you stay
like,
6 feet away at a church, what's the difference
yeah,
between
yeah.
that
Don't
and
don't
being
push your
anywhere
kids. I'll
else?
tell you right now. I'll tell your kids right now. Do not let your kids go anywhere with a youth pastor. There. Now we're safe.
or a
Uh,
public school teacher.
Oh boy.
Similar rates of
True.
child
What
abuse.
the hell?
True. No field trips, guys. But
Um,
no, I wanted to get your input on that, because I wanted to see if I know what was able to reach me, and I wanted to see if there was another thing when I'm trying to reach other people in a different regard. So I do appreciate that. And again, I'm going to put it in the
I
chat
think
one more time.
stoicism. I think stoicism. I think
I'm gonna put
stoicism
it.
is a
That
philosophy.
is
Hold on.
way too
really,
complex for them.
I'm gonna put it. Yeah,
That
I'm
is
gonna
not.
put it.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I am going. I'm going to
No.
put it in the chat one more time, and I'm just going to put it in PrimeCayes Discord as well. That freedhearts.org. If there's an LGBT person that you know right now that's having a really hard time because of this another attack, and if people are thinking hate crime and stuff, they could be religious and they could need some help. And Susan Friedman and that freedhearts.org link, that can really help out a lot of people, especially when it comes to suicide, a crisis of faith, or feeling alone and like they're under attack. So I really want to like shill that link and donate to Prime so I can have a better day.
but someone did donate to Boiler
Yes.
apparently. So thank you for that sub.
Oh,
But we have our
Thanks.
friend Jangles. We haven't had here in a long time. Jangles, thanks for stopping by, being part of this, jumping in. I know you have a limited amount of time, but you had stuff on your chest, so we'd love to hear it.
So thank you for letting me in. I hope I'm not derailing the conversation too much. So the day of the attack,
Fuck it, derail.
Fucking derail. Cool. The day of the attack, I was in Texas debating Alex Stein, Primetime 99, always on the grind, the pimp on the blimp, on queer theory, and he made a lot of the accusations that the conservatives do. They're coming after your kids, they're indoctrinating your kids, and the typical like fear-mongering rhetoric. But since I was actually in person and he couldn't run away, I kept asking, what does that indoctrination look like? When someone says they're coming from for your kids, they always keep it vague. Because they'll say, how are they coming after your kids? By indoctrinating them in trans ideology. Okay, what does that look like? By teaching them all these like gender theory things. Okay, what does that look like? They have trans flags in the room. Okay, how's that indoctrination? What is that going to do? What are the effects? Is that tricking kids into being trans? Is it that easy? Why doesn't it work the other way? And it's so easy for them to draw the connection between like, oh, seeing a trans flag, that can turn a kid trans. However, when we throw out the I think pretty reasonable declaration that saying that a bunch of pedophiles are coming after your kids might lead to stochastic terrorism, now all of a sudden there's like no link between language. There's no link between what you say and what it inspires other people to do. It seems like that link becomes tenuous at that point. And
Well, it's not tenuous. It's the divisiveness of the country. That's because the divisiveness of the country is the actual issue. What we're just seeing is the symptoms of the divisiveness.
The divisiveness is not two-sided, okay? Trans people want to exist, and Christians get to live their lives the way they want.
I'm not saying
then people
trans
hate trans
versus
people.
Christian. I'm not saying trans versus Christians. I'm saying the right versus the left.
Okay, but
You
notice
do understand that, right?
I do understand that, but what
Okay.
I'm not understanding is what is the divisiveness? Like all the
What is
rhetoric
the
about trans people,
divisiveness?
the rhetoric about trans people right now is being driven almost purely from the right attacking them. When you see punching going back the other way, it's defensive. It's
Okay.
hey,
And,
Yeah, so you asked-
and the attacks on Christianity are almost purely from the left. I mean,
Yeah, but what do those look like?
we could go about this. We can go about this all day. That wasn't the point of what I was saying. What I'm saying is that the divisiveness of the country is what has led us to this, and it's what we need to fix. This is just symptoms of the divisiveness of our country, of how
You described-
tribalized we are.
so
That I am this and you are that. Therefore, you're my enemy, and this needs to be finished.
No,
Like,
but look
that's the way
look how-
Americans think.
Look how you're framing divisiveness and attacking. How to like? I'm not gonna lie that there are a bunch of atheists, but in terms of like actual policy, how are we attacking the right? It seems they view like the legalization of gay marriage was an attack on Christianity. That's not letting other people
That's
do
the gay
other
agenda.
things.
Don't forget
That's
the gay agenda.
The gay agenda is to put
So,
is to take
again,
gay people to the moon or something. Never mind.
Can I
Uh,
ask? Can I ask how we
just
were to?
finishing that point really quick.
Yeah.
It seems like to attack Christianity, it's to let other people exist.
No, that's not to attack Christianity. What I mean by attack Christianity is that there's a giant double standard in between, for example, Muslims and Christians. For example, there was a TikTok I saw not too long ago. They were kicking a Bible around on a sidewalk. I guarantee you would be caught dead doing that with the Quran.
Okay, what about
So,
policy?
but
Is that
there
policy?
are.
So we have
Again,
individual assholes on TikTok
there's not
compared to like policy, like
okay.
outline.
I guess
Okay,
I guess
so
I can't answer the
Jangles,
question.
Jangles, you said that like, what does it look like? And I think, right, like I do think that there are a lot of right wingers that aren't like really informed of the indoctrination of their children, right? They just kind of see signifiers, they see like little symbols, right? They see a trans flag, marketing, towards young children ideas that aren't developmentally appropriate. But like what I would say is things like psychus, right? Like sexual education for change being like the third biggest the third biggest company that is involved in setting the ES standards, right? They boast about teaching social emotional learning to over 16 million children, right? Like when you have large institutions that specifically think that at the end of second grade, you need to be able to, and I'll put a link in chat for you, like, quote, define gender, gender identity, and gender role stereotypes. Like this is not developmentally appropriate shit for second graders, right? It's not. And it's very clear
now,
that these standards are designed. What do you mean, why not?
I'm grilling you. I want to know why
Role
not.
confusion. So like if we look at Eric Erickson's model, right, in terms of like role confusion, right? Like at the time where an individual is discovering their sexuality and where they can be influenced and who they are as an individual is actually late middle school, early high school, right? You're talking about second graders and having to be able to regurgitate gender role stereotypes. And if you pretend like
It's
that's not
something that they-
indoctrination into the
Hold on.
philosophy, that's insane.
And I'm being confirmed. That's indoctrination. No, it's not. That's
So
that,
why am I
that's
not
kind of-
straight? Why am I not straight?
It's in the chat, by the way.
Yeah, that's the kind of weak shit I've been hearing.
I just have a question.
They know what gender is, and I had the same question to Alex Stein, and I'd love to know.
Yeah, I really want to know.
First
why am I
graders
not-
can articulate
Stop.
gender role
Let's go
stereotypes.
to Stabby. And also we want to get Doobie in
Why?
at some point.
Okay. Why am I not straight? Physical, emotional, mental, just so much fucking abuse and sometimes actual punishment and bruises and really bad things, and I am not straight. Why? Do you really think I could be indoctrinated? I started saying things about girls being pretty when I was 6. I have had more female partners in my life than I have had male partners. And so why am I not straight? Because everything that was done toward me, every humiliating thing, I had to say that I was, making men lust for me. I didn't know what the word lust meant, and I had to say it in front of an entire congregation. I was bullied and horrifically.
You were in a cult.
Like,
what's your argument?
shut up. Why am I not straight? That's indoctrination, and I'm not straight. Indoctrination is not going to turn you fucking gay, dude. It's not going to turn you fucking straight.
Exceptionally,
Well, congratulations for straw manning my argument and describing your cult experience.
No.
That sucks for you.
No, that's
No,
a
I'm
valid.
not.
No, that is a
It's a
valid.
valid
point.
It's a
Nah,
valid
just a
argument.
No,
stupid
what?
fucking
No.
anecdote. It's irrelevant to the
A sweet
conversation.
no.
So
no,
maybe
a
let's make it
sweet little
relevant then.
story.
No,
A
let's
sweet
make
little story is going to indoctrinate people, but actual force is not. Fuck off.
No, it is a
No,
very
because
valid
you-
argument.
like you're not addressing
why.
any
No.
of the shit that I said.
Then let me address it. I addressed that shit
Go
all
ahead.
weekend. All right, that's true. Why is it only indoctrination to turn kids gay? But apparently, we can go through the exact same thing in the other direction and not turn out straight. Do you know gender is the first social lens we develop? 2-year-olds know what gender is. To expect someone who's 7 to know what gender is?
Define gender for me.
Gender is your social conception of where you fit on a spectrum of gender.
You just use the word in the definition. So define it for me. 2-year-olds get it, you dumbass.
Yes,
Fine.
do you think 2-year-olds okay. 2-year-olds know what boys and girls are. Do you think they could define it? They know what boys
Can they
sections are.
define
They know
what
the
a boy or
difference
girl
between boys
is?
and girls is. Yeah.
Would it
what do you
meet
think they would
your
say?
definition of boy or girl? Your social constructionist lens of what a boy or girl is? Shut the
Yeah, do
fuck
you-
up. 2-year-olds don't understand this shit, you lie.
You don't think that, I'm sorry, 2-year-olds? Do you think if you ask like a
You don't
4-year-old
even do it. When I grill
think-
you can't even do it. 2-year-olds
We
can
can make
do
it
Sweetie,
relevant
you do
again.
it.
We can make it
no,
relevant.
Hey, let me finish. Do you think a 4-year-old could point out a boy and a girl? You think they might
Presumably.
have a shit definition for
Well,
it.
they might have some mistakes. I'm sure.
Okay, so
But
they
I
know
mean,
the difference
what is a
between
boy?
mommies and daddies, and they know the difference
What's
between
a
mommies and
boy?
daddies. Do you think
What's
they
a
could tell
boy?
you? Do you think they could tell you? They have an
4-year-olds.
idea of what it
You
is.
think 4-year-olds can?
They
What is,
typically
no,
be
don't
going
make
by
that
secondary.
different.
They
You
know
can't
the
fucking
difference
define
secondary
your own
sexual
the
fucking
difference
characteristics,
between
term.
them.
not their
So
gender.
we have
That's kind
it.
of
So we have
irrelevant
it.
to the
So we have
conversation.
it. So we have a conception of
yeah.
gender.
Could
We
be.
have a conception of gender. We have a conception of
As a
gender
child.
identity
No, that's
as a
stupid.
child, and it's been. And all right,
Okay, so
it
if you
is.
would ask
They
a
don't know. They
5-year-old
don't know what the
if
boys
you would ask a
are.
5-year-old to tell apart mommies and daddies, they typically be going after they do that using secondary sexual characteristics,
Sure.
not the gender of the person, not the expressed gender, not the internal gender, what
It is the gender of the person.
identity.
Wait, what do you think? Yeah,
Hold on,
They might
wait,
use
are-
behavior,
Hold
how
on,
they
are you going to
act.
argue that sex and gender are now linked? That they're like the same thing now?
Of course, they're linked. Not the same thing.
Okay.
No, so this
you
notion
believe,
of
so to be super
You
clear,
don't have a strong
believe-
concept of gender, dude. And you're
Let-
saying
let-
2 and 4-year-olds get it.
Let Doobie. It was Doobie's turn any which way. So Doobie, you can
Okay,
try,
so-
and then Lactoid, I see your hand.
So short of this gender ideology indoctrination, which does happen, and we could get into it pretty easily, do you think a 5-year-old, I'm not even going to use a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, could tell the difference between mommy and daddy, right, without using secondary sexual characteristics?
no, they probably use secondary sex characteristics.
Yeah, of course.
Sure,
Yeah, so that's not gender.
that's not gender. It's part of gender. It's part of gender expression. Why do you think gender
So
affirmation?
can you
Why do
define
you think gender? So gender is your social conception of where you fall on the sex spectrum.
But
On the sex
a
spectrum,
child
okay.
can't point
sex
out where someone else falls on the sex spectrum. They can point out sex.
It's a terrible definition.
I can ask a kid, is this a male or female? And they'll be able to tell me. But
they have a
if I
conception
ask
of it,
if I ask
Not a definition.
they understand sex.
Would they call it sex? Would they be able to tell you?
They
like,
would
what
not
sex
call
is?
it sex, but I'm using the scientific definition of what I'm
They'd
referring
say
to.
boy or girl or something, right? But typically, they're not going to be talking about like what's hanging between somebody's legs.
No,
right,
of course
usually.
not.
Yeah, of
Yeah, because
course.
they don't know what they don't know
Sure.
about. They don't really know about genitals or chromosomes or anything like that. So they're
course.
using these social signifiers.
So
of
if someone looks
gender.
like a male,
and
they're
they're
going to say
taught,
that's a boy. If someone looks like a female, they're going to say that's a woman or that's
Cool.
a girl.
and that's exactly what they do. So we already have a conception of gender, but they don't be able to give a hardcore definition of it, but they can give it a conception of it. To say that, yeah, to make this argument that 5-year-olds don't know what boys and girls are, or at least have a conception of it, is ridiculous.
That's not
because
what we said.
no,
That's not
you
what
said
we
it's.
said.
You said it's you said a 7-year-old, so a second grader. It is indoctrination to ask them to define gender and gender identity. Hey, maybe I
Hey,
should have
no,
got that.
let's-
Maybe I
let's-
should have
let's be
gotten that.
honest.
You
let's be
can't
honest.
even fucking
So
do
if
it.
we had, so if we
Yeah,
had
maybe
like,
I
if
should
we
have
had
gotten that
a case-
education.
If we had a trans woman, right, in front of the same 5-year-old, and this trans woman was someone who just identified as trans, but didn't feel the need or the desire to express themselves in a stereotypically feminine way, that child would not be able to say that's a trans woman, or that's a woman, or that's the girl. They would say that's a boy.
Okay. Now, let's say that we absolutely do. fuck
Another
up their
question for you,
self-projection
since you
Hold
want to
on,
know
hold
what,
on,
you want to know
one
what
time, one time.
indoctrination looks like.
Let-
I'll be
let-
real quick. Do you think 5th graders should be able to define, according to Psychos's standards, at the end of 5th grade, the role hormones play in the physical, social, cognitive, and emotional changes during adolescence, and the potential role of hormone blockers on young people who identify as transgender?
So you
Think
asked
we
me
should
if
be teaching
10-year-olds
about
can do that?
hormone blockers?
Wait, is that to 10-year-olds? Is it?
At the
is-
end
I'm
of
sure-
5th grade, so that would be
Yeah, 10-year-olds.
Yeah, 10, 10, 10,
So-
11.
we'll say, yeah.
I think people about to
10
go
and
through
11.
puberty. Yeah, I think people
You
about.
don't
to
think
go
that's indoctrination?
I think people who are
No.
about to go through puberty should absolutely know what hormones they're about to experience and the changes they can expect. Yeah, duh. You
Hormone
were
blockers?
so excited for
Hormone
that.
blockers?
Hormone
Hormone
blockers?
blockers?
Yeah, learning about the hormones. Now learn what would happen if you didn't take them. Sure. How's that indoctrination? How's
do you
learning
know
about
why
that
you
shit
can't see the indoctrination? Because you're clearly a fucking groomer, dude. You think that's
Jesus
fucking normal?
God.
That's insane.
Wow. Well, there we go.
So, all right.
Can
Yes.
I ask to go back to relevance really quickly? Because what's really funny to me is that we were talking about gay people being shot and the rhetoric, and immediately the conservatives jumped right in to exactly the kind of rhetoric that we were asking if
No
that
one
constitutes
wants
Hey,
conservative
racial
expression.
don't loop
Like,
me in with that.
Oh,
Don't
are
loop
you?
me
I'm
in
sure
with
Shut
that's
the
that.
going-
fuck up, Scott.
I'm sure
No,
Scott's
shut
not
the fuck up,
suggesting that
Scott.
Jingles
Are
is
you
a
gonna go-
pedophile. What he's
Shut
suggesting
up,
is that he
dude.
liked to groom
Shut up.
children.
Are you
Yeah,
gonna-
that's what
are you
grooming
gonna go-
means.
Are
No,
you
fuck it.
gonna
That's what
go
grooming
shoot
means.
somebody
That's
over
not what
it?
he
I
said.
have
No,
one
that
question.
isn't what he
Are you
means.
going to shoot them? Are you going to shoot somebody over it? Then shut
No,
the
don't
fuck
be
up, you
stupid.
little fuck.
Don't be
Now-
stupid. Okay, stop comparing
what
your
grooming
fucking
means.
fucked up cold
Get it
upbringing to
back-
the average
no,
conservative
no.
or Republican.
Get it
That's not how
back
the world works.
to the fucking
We
subject.
get it. You
Okay,
moved from
okay.
one cult into
Rhetoric.
another cult, all right? We
Okay.
get it.
No, stop.
The transition to the
We're
cult of
asking about-
leftism. Relax.
We're asking about the rhetoric, not what gender is. Is this a gender discussion, or are we talking about the rhetoric from a shooting? Because that's what I thought the panel was about.
And I'm sorry,
Okay.
are you gonna pretend that grooming doesn't have a sexual connotation? Y'all already had a word for the thing you're trying to pretend you're describing, and it was indoctrination. You use it all the time in CRT. I've heard it a lot. You use grooming instead because it has a sexual connotation. If you
That's a lie.
try, that's
That's a
okay.
lie.
Oh my
That's a
God.
lie. Oh,
No,
okay.
So I want to hear from Lactoid. Lactoid.
I can
he's
define
been-
groomer, but
as usual, one of the calmest people in the panel, please.
It's getting a little bit heated, folks. Maybe we should take a deep breath. But I think something was said. I think Scott, I think you said it, that generally people, especially older people, maybe don't know all the words or you can really fully analyze, because also they might not be super like monitoring their kids' education or monitoring like the media or monitoring this stuff all the time. And they might not have the right words, or they might phrase it bluntly, or they might phrase it inaccurately. But like, we did have two panels where we had one panel where like you had like someone with giant like human-sized breasts going to teach kids, right?
I don't know about human size.
And then, well, a human could fit within one of them. And then you had.
Well, I could band if I say utters.
Yeah, well, and then you had like another one.
it was like a who cow fucking
you had
cake
like
played out in school. Yeah.
Yeah, you had like drag your kids to Pride, which I mean I thought was sexualizing to children, and I thought it was deeply problematic on a couple levels. And it's not so much as like, I understand these like isolated events, so it's not so much that these have happened, but I think what conservatives see is they see people defend these events, and they see people support these events, and then they see what they obviously are, which is like they kind of have like a sexualizing kind of innuendo to them, kind of overall theme, perceived purpose. And when you have like a political, like their political enemies, which they're probably predisposed to disagree with anyway, that are supporting this, I mean, it would seem like the logical jump would be that they would just jump right into the harsh rhetoric. I mean, so I guess at what point, like, sure, there's obviously some responsibility there on the fault of like the people who jump to that rhetoric, but like, at what point is there, to kind of to Doobie's point a little bit, like, is there any responsibility on the people who
Not a little bit, a lot of
events?
it.
Yeah,
Go all the
is there any liability here on the people who support events like Drag Your Kids to Pride or other kind of similar like child kind of sexual innuendoed themed events?
But here's the problem.
They're pushing the culture war, right?
Yeah,
But that doesn't make it their fault.
Here's the problem, as Fabian Liberty so beautifully demonstrated. If it is not cis heteronormative, it's sexual. Like teaching, he just balked at the notion that we're going to teach about hormones and their effects on the body to people who are about to go through puberty. And the thing that made it sexual, the thing that made it grooming, the thing that made it sexual indoctrination, which is what grooming means. You're a coward or a pussy if you don't acknowledge that. The thing that made it sexual was introducing trans people or gay people. That makes
That's
it
why
sexual.
That's why I brought up a sexual example, right?
Yeah, no. So that's
and the
that's
drag
not
kids
true.
was like, no. I know, no.
You're
but
lying.
You called it
lying.
a sexual example because it was queer, because it was drag.
No, that's not why I did
No,
it.
drag
I
is inherently
think if you
sexual.
had like if you brought children to like an event where there was like scantily clad women that were walking around, and the kids were like walking out and they're doing dances and like shaking their butt.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those videos.
And the kids
scantily
were
clad.
handing money, and the kids were handing money to like.
Okay,
dancers.
hold on.
I and with like a sexual kind of phrase like in highlights on the wall, like it's not going to.
Do you know what?
Itself.
Do you know what an
That
innuendo
would
is?
It's not going to lick itself. That's an innuendo.
Yes, that's an innuendo. You know why you use innuendos? You know why there's like sexual innuendo in Toy Story? Because it goes over kids' heads. It's not going to affect them. Do you think? This is why I ask what the indoctrination is, and it's all just incidental bullshit that is not in any way sexual grooming. And then we try to like flip it and say, "Hey,
Now
we're
you're trying to
indoctrinated with
redefine-
Cinderella.
You're
We're
trying to
indoctrinated."
redefine it.
Redefine
You're trying to redefine. You're trying to redefine the right's conception of what grooming
right.
is.
How about this?
The reason that the right
answer
uses
that.
the term groomer, right, is not because it is inherently sexual in nature.
It is.
The reason is because the process is the same, right? When people talk about grooming on the right, what they're talking about is isolating children from their parents to bring them into a cult-like ideology.
That's indoctrination.
Love bombing them, right? Telling them that like, oh, don't keep secrets from your parents.
While you're defining
these are
grooming, I
all
want you to tell me why this doesn't apply to indoctrination. How is this not the definition of indoctrination? as well.
It could
Okay,
be a
if you
type
want to
of
use a
indoctrination.
synonym, that's fine. But the
Groomer and
reason
indoctrinator are not
right,
synonyms.
the reason the right uses the term grooming is because the process is the same. You're now trying to prove, you're trying to create a higher standard of evidence
There's
to
an
say,
actual-
to like add pedophilia into it, so that
Yes,
you
because
can
that was the
run
actual
away
definition of
from the fact
grooming.
that you're a fucking groomer.
Grooming was a fucking legal term, and it meant sexual exploitation. That's what it meant before this. That's the
Yeah,
reason
and they
you
used
switched.
to mean two fucking people.
toddlers-
Language changes, you
toddlers
weirdo.
would
Like
toddlers
it's
and
fucking used to be
tiaras
plural, but now
really
it's a
quickly.
fucking singular.
Hold
Like,
on.
fuck
Okay.
off.
Scott, would toddlers and tiaras be considered grooming?
Fuck yes, it would. Jesus Christ.
Wonderful.
Okay, and that's
Restraints
actually
So would
So
taking
is
your
your
so would
argument now
taking your
that, hey,
10-year-old to fucking Hooters. They're
Is
all
there
Yeah.
fucked
now
up.
that people who send their kids to fucking child
I want
beauty
all
pageants are
pageants,
groomers, so it's okay
I'm
for
sorry.
us to be groomers? Is that your
Nope,
thing now?
nope,
No.
nope. My argument, because I'm an old-fashioned feminist, I'm an old millennial feminist. My argument is that I want pageants banned. I've always wanted them banned, but I just want them gone.
I
all
would
of
agree
them.
with
I
that,
hate them
actually.
all.
Yeah.
Really?
But my point
I'm
is,
glad to deal with that later. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want child drag shows banned?
yeah, no, I want
Yes.
all fucking pageants banned.
No, Stabby, do you
immediately.
want child drag shows banned?
Yep, all pageants, everything.
very
I want
nice.
it gone.
Good.
Sorry.
Save our kids.
That's my
Okay.
most authoritarian fucking
so
stance. It's
let's-
not just kids, women too.
I'm
Can I just
dragging.
to clear things up quick?
Okay.
If you just look at the definition of grooming, there are two
Oh
of
my
them,
fuck.
and one of them is sexual. Let's see, I had it pulled up. So definition number 2 is the action of a pedophile for preparing a child for a meeting. Okay. Definition number 1 is the practice of brushing or cleansing the coat of a horse, dog, or other animal. Now, which of those two definitions?
There's a third
do you think-
definition. There's a third definition. You know this. You're
Go-
looking at it.
Hold on. Let me expand
Hold
it.
on.
I'm only seeing 2.
You've heard the saying, I'm grooming somebody for leadership. You've heard that saying before. I'm grooming somebody to take over this thing. You've heard that before.
Okay,
That's
it
true,
is.
actually.
It's
Just
that's
to be
not
clear-
what pulls up in the Oxford one. That
Tubi,
I
you think
believe
that's the
you,
definition
yes.
they're using? They're like, you're
No,
like,
hold on. To be super clear about my position on the grooming thing, right? So I think obviously there's an implication there that's sexual. Obviously.
obviously,
However-
and you're lying if you say there
however-
isn't, Scott.
However, I think that there's obviously on the other side people who are doing things that I think conservatives are right to call grooming, who are telling their children to hide the fact that they're now coming out as trans as children from their parents, to hide the fact that they're dressing up as girls at school from their parents. Right?
Yep.
I think that's more than indoctrination.
Now,
This
I
is
want
this
you
is
to show
an
me
info-
how.
No,
You say
wait,
how.
wait,
You're
hold on,
taking
further.
it as no. You're
Further,
taking it as
further,
self-evident.
further,
I'm not
further,
letting you
further.
get away
I'm
with
gonna-
that.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna.
Okay.
I'll get to it. I
Jingles,
promise.
don't interrupt. You're
I'll get to it, I
you're
promise.
not smart enough for this conversation. Like, stop.
Stop.
Oh,
That's
boy.
not true.
Like, just let him make
Jingles,
his fucking
Jingles is a
argument.
very smart guy. Okay.
Doobie then
Hold on.
Jangles.
But he crumbled. He can't even define gender. 2-year-olds
Doobie
can
then
define gender.
Jangles. Doobie, please.
Okay, me then Jingles. Okay. So that aside, right? So acknowledging that, I think reality. I would say that a large part of the reason the right uses the word grooming is because it's politically effective. Just like Prime says defund the police is like a call to action, is politically effective, it's going to draw attention. Saying that there's people grooming your kids in school is also gonna be more politically effective.
Do you
than
know
say,
why
hey,
it's
they're
politically
teaching your
effective?
children about gender. That's
Do you
not
know why?
politically effective.
Do you know why? Yeah, exactly. Telling like
They're also
the
taking
new
them to
pledge-
erotic shows, though. That's like
Dog,
kind of sexual.
Do you know why it's effective? Because it's linked to pedophilia, and pedophiles are like the worst people in society.
Wait, hold
That's
on.
why
it's
it's
critical
politically
gender
effective. That's
theory.
why
Jingles,
they
when
use
you
it.
Jingles, when you
No,
have
that's
a
why
waste
they
ball-
use it.
So is critical gender
Django,
theory.
that's
Dale
true,
Rubin,
actually.
huh?
Doobie.
You know what I mean?
Hold
Like,
on,
she was
that's
a
true.
fucking pedo.
Doobie.
Like,
Wait,
look
hold
up
on.
fucking sexual citizenship for
Let
children.
Doobie.
Papers with thousands
Scott
of
was just
respond.
claiming that grooming had nothing to do with
lamenting.
sexualization. He just said like what 10 minutes ago that grooming had nothing to do with sexualization, and now here he is showing that he's a fucking liar.
Let's
Two things can be true at the same time, dipshit.
I desperately want to hear Doobie. Doobie didn't get a chance to talk much last time. I want to hear from him. So I see your hand, Stabby and Electric.
So James, I can accept right what you said. That they're pushing this idea because they're linking this to sexuality because they want people to think that trans people are pedophiles or trans allies are pedophiles. Sure. But you also have to acknowledge that on the other side, you have
John
people
Money.
who are taking kids to fucking drag shows where they have people in fucking bathing suits and thongs and shit, shaking their ass to songs about licking shit with it's not gonna lick itself on the wall. What you acknowledged earlier was sexual innuendo at a child fucking themed event or aimed event where they encourage people to bring their children. People are going to see that shit and say, hey, you're bringing these children to something sexual. You're linking your ideology, your LGBT shit to sexuality, and you're trying to drag my kids to it. You're encouraging people to drag their kids to it. So of course they're going to call these people pedophiles. Like, well, there's no other, like, of course it's going to happen.
All right. I want you to walk me through it. Let's say, I don't know, take the sign, okay? Let's say we all agree that's bad. It is sexual innuendo. It's probably not appropriate around kids. Now, I want to know the sinister plan. Like, we're grooming these kids, and we're going to do it by a sexual innuendo in a sign. I want you to tell me how that makes sense.
I can do that. I can do that real quick.
Sure.
The philosophy is speaking through them, right? So this is the problem with all forms of critical theory, critical race theory, critical gender theory, etc. Right? And the philosophy is setting forward an idea of an oppressed oppressor narrative, an idea of a superposition. In critical gender theory, we're talking about heteronormativity, right? In critical race theory, we'd be talking about like white supremacy.
And all this is being communicated to a child via sign.
I just said the philosophy is speaking through people.
I know, and they're going to get it.
Right.
And you're saying that the child is going to absorb that through an innuendo on a sign. That's
Well,
the argument you're trying to make.
That's a specific goal stated
show-
by people that wrote papers on transformative social emotional learning. The idea is that if we teach enough critical theory to children, we can decouple them from bad ideas like capitalism, individualism, and create a critical democracy.
And this is being coordinated and done through the neon sign. That's what you're trying to prove. That's central to the conversation.
That's not what I'm trying to prove.
You're making accusations of grooming, and every time I ask for it, now we're getting into the weeds. It has nothing to do.
You
with
pretending to be
blaming
stupid
shit is
and not
grooming,
you
and you can't demonstrate why.
Scott,
I've fucked you over the rails over and over again, and you keep pivoting.
I keep pivoting by like directly asking you pointed questions.
I've given you like 20 examples of like actual institutionalized critical gender theory as a means of promulgating this philosophy.
How? Why? What philosophy? What do we want to do to these kids?
You're the only leftist I know that demands we only talk about the anecdotes.
So let's go to
because you're fucking scared bitch. Once I have my
we'll start with Black Toy, and then we'll go to Stabby, right? So
I'm not going to call you a scared bitch, but one of the things that you did do, I think there was a little bit dishonest in that, when we're talking about that event, we're talking about the event in its totality, which was, you have this neon sign. In addition, you have scantily clad people shaking their butts in front of the faces of children. Now, maybe if you just take the sign, like maybe just having this being a passing sign, that might not be like a massive issue. But when you take that in conjunction with everything else that's happening at this event, it doesn't paint a pretty picture. And so when you keep saying, well, all of this, the fucking sign, the neon sign, you're saying all this comes from the sign? No, we're not talking about just the sign, right? We're talking about the whole event. And specifically, the thing that you haven't brought up, which is I think the reason is because it's very difficult to defend it, which is people shaking their bare ass or their scantily clad ass in the faces of young children.
You having to exaggerate their bare ass. Well, they weren't bare. They weren't. You said that they were wearing thongs in one of your earlier statements. No, they weren't. That's
Judy said that, but they were wearing like very.
They were wearing thongs.
That's a real fucking groomer.
They were doing that. Because I'm working my way up to what is scantily clad. I saw those events.
Were bare. Sorry.
I saw those events. No, they weren't. I fucking saw all these videos. No, they weren't. You're saying they're scantily clad.
Hold on. I'm glad that the word bare ass can get some of the virgins on the panel like into a fucking lather. Calm down.
Does people naked in front of children not also piss you off?
Virginity is purity.
If a wave dick around in front of a child, would that piss you off? Would that make you a virgin if you're upset about that?
And the reason that I was particularly specifying all pageants, because I'm more authoritarian about this and I want all of them gone, okay? Because they're shaking their bare asses in front of children at these other pageants as well, which I think is bad. Now,
what if they were tipping them?
I asked you on purpose because the reason we were asked to come to this panel was over a shooting and the rhetoric that could be involved. Toddlers and Tiaras did not have a massive jump in shootings that could clear out churches and straights and trads so that we could save the children from this.
So when we're talking about the rhetoric,
That's
maybe
ridiculous.
one of the things we should be fucking aware of is that when we were talking about an actual fucking shooting, a tragedy in my state, in a place I used to live in, and the fucking suspect lives in a neighborhood I used to live in, like
Here.
a few doors down. Okay, we're
Girl.
talking about a shooting, but you guys want to talk about gender and how
We don't even
anybody
know
who
his
is not
motive.
straight is a
Stabby,
group.
That's
We
Stabby,
do.
part of the
No, we
problem.
do. We
Stabby,
do.
you're
We
so
do. It's a
fucking
hate crime.
dishonest.
We do.
Hold on,
We don't know his
if
motive.
there was a push,
do.
if there was a movement to push like not drag shows, like child beauty pageants into schools across the country, of course people would be fucking upset about it. We'd hear about it every fucking day from everybody
There
across
are.
the country because they're not. Don't be an idiot.
Yeah,
Show
there
it
are.
to me. Show it to us. Where's their
No,
movement trying to
we've had
push? Where's their
in our
movement today trying to push child beauty pageants into public schools across the country?
they tried to sell at a school that I was working at. They tried to sell like these
Another
built-in
anecdote.
Halloween
Where's the
stuff. Oh,
movement
right.
trying to push
Oh,
child beauty
exactly.
pageants into schools across the
Shut up.
country?
No,
Where's
no.
the whole
It's a movement
college
trying to
degrees based upon
so fucking
college
quiet.
degrees based upon indoctrinating children
Yeah.
in school?
Oh
What's
yeah.
critical
There's college
pedagogy?
degrees based on drag shows
It's called
too.
a seminary. It's called a seminary.
No,
school.
critical pedagogy is a fucking degree programs everywhere. And it's
Let's go to.
specifically designed
Yeah,
to
there's,
put
Oh,
critical
sure.
theory
there's some
in
people.
schools, including
Oh
critical
my.
gender
I'm a
So.
member of the class.
Oh my God. It's lots of things are getting confused here. Let's go to Corey. Right. Please.
Mm.
Yeah, Lacto, I don't want to engage with you for a moment. So,
Hit me,
you know,
Corey.
no violence on my watch. So rewinding, I've asked you the question before. So do you still stand by, like, that teacher with the human-sized breast?
Yeah.
Do you still consider that sexual?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And you consider like the sign at the show as like sexual innuendo?
Yeah, I think like especially taken in conjunction with like the rest of the conduct there, like tipping people who are shaking asses and like somebody's like bending over and like flopping their ass in the air.
Yeah. So
as
just
people are-
so just to clarify, like the sign in a vacuum, but you talk about the totality, the sign in context. It's a sexual
the sign in
environment.
of itself is probably somewhat sexual, but like it wouldn't like if some kids saw it without that.
If it was at an
context,
if it was
I
at an
wouldn't be
ice cream,
freaking out, right? I wouldn't be.
if it
having,
was
like,
at an
moral
ice cream
panic.
parlor, it would be weird, but like maybe not that bad.
Right. So given the fact that you
wouldn't
still
like it.
you
would
still
still be
stand, and I'm not for the the sexualization of children either. I think we're on the same page there. But I'm trying to find out where your line is of like you define the teacher as that's sexual in nature. So like I'm gonna go to like the little bit of absurd, like are children. I'll start off like, can children like eat hot dogs? Is that like sexual in nature?
You're talking about like the fucking glizzy meme. Yeah, look, kids. I guess kids can eat hot dogs. But like
Oscar Mayer
but
wieners,
like, yeah, but if,
like
but if somebody
Oscar Mayer wieners.
yeah,
in
yeah,
your
yeah,
mouth?
yeah. If somebody's eating a hot dog in front of a kid, like in a very clearly sexual way, I would have an issue with that.
Okay,
I
What's a
mean, I
sexual
assume you
way?
would too, wouldn't you?
No, I mean, like, if they're
In a
just
very
eating,
clearly sexual way,
if
like
they're
they're
just
gagging on it.
if they are just eating, no, like if someone's choking on a hot dog, they need medical attention. But
No,
so
they're
I would
deep
ask,
throwing it in and out. There you go.
Could they make it to a hospital? They live in a rural area. That's the question.
but I would ask, so my follow up may be a little bit less absurd. Can a parent bathe with their child? Is that sexual in nature?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I've actually I've heard some stories about that.
Well,
where,
but you don't think it's sexual in
parents-
nature, or you don't think they can bathe with their child?
I don't.
Because
I mean,
there's bare ass there.
no, I get it. And there may not be like any sexual intent, and there may not be sexual intent in the same way that there absolutely was at this show. But like, I don't know. I think that just opens
When
up
your
the door
kid
for
is
too much
puking,
risk.
when your
Depending,
kid
I
is
guess, the
puking
age
down
of the
your back. Wait. My kid had dysentery. And
I
when
just
kids
I
are
just want to
puking on your
finish my
back,
point.
skin to
Sorry,
skin
I'll
in the
let you go.
shower.
Maybe a kid with
Go ahead.
dysentery, like you can have like weird health, like in the same way we let doctors where we have to have doctors help kids when they're naked or whatever. Like we have specific exceptions because of severe need. We generally shouldn't have it as a rule that
Corey.
we have kids naked.
Yeah, so as a rule, like a parent shouldn't bathe with their child,
It's
like
not
their young child.
sexual.
I would advise against it, but I
No,
don't think it's as sexualized as this event is. For sure.
Okay, yeah, interesting. I just want to get that out there. Like, I understand your line.
Corey, can you add a trip to the beach?
Yeah, like, can children be naked on the beach?
No, I think Corey,
That
you
is-
actually,
that
I
is a
think Corey,
regular-
I think
Can
Corey
they be
regular-
reasoned me into that position actually the last time we talked about this, where I talked about my experience in Sweden, And you convinced me, yeah, it was probably weird, and I'm glad that Sweden's moving away from that. We shouldn't have naked kids on beaches.
Or not even naked. Like, can kids see scantily clad men and women on the beach, dressed as scantily as in that video?
More scantily.
Yeah, more so, really. Yeah.
On a kid that's like, on like a kid themed beach, I would be in favor.
No,
of
just
not
a beach
kid
where
themed,
you
just a beach.
kids are allowed at regular.
Well, I mean, this is a
beaches, like,
kid themed event. Let's be honest here, right? This
No. But we bring
this is
beaches are family fun for all. Okay, all right.
This
family
is
fun,
this is
family
this
fun
is
for
the
all. Some guy
bullshit.
walks in with like a banana hammock. No, it's not.
Yeah,
This
they
is-
do, but
this
they
is-
do it all the
no,
time.
listen. This is the bullshit that the left is doing, is switching between anecdote and institution, anecdote and philosophy, and
I made
switching
no
and
anecdotes.
pivoting between one or the other and be like, well, what about this instance, right? So
You
that
guys
must
stop
mean that
baiting
this
your
instance
kids
is
with
okay.
sexual shit.
Right.
Fuck off.
No.
I put
No,
forth
no,
anecdote
no, no,
at
no,
all.
no, 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 no.
but that was an
reason,
anecdote.
listen,
Creeps.
listen. The reason that people are offended by it ain't gonna lick itself is because it's in the greater context. You want to use anecdotes and then you want to separate it from the context. You want to separate it from the philosophy. It is the totality of all of the evidence that shows that there is a massive movement, especially in academia and education, to put forward critical theory. And then what ends up happening as critical gender theory promulgates out into society, we see drag queen story hour, we see drag shows, we see
You have
trans
to press
flags
so
and
hard.
LGBT flags.
Okay,
And so
you didn't get it
this
the
is
first
the
time.
philosophy
Stop.
that is
Wait.
pernicious,
I'm interrupting. I'm sorry.
moving
You
through the
didn't get it the
entirety of
first
the
time.
situation.
You didn't get it the first time, so I'm going to actually double down and go a little bit further. I think that you know how when parents take their kids to a strip club, like a single mom has an extra shift or something, or the dad takes his kid to a strip club, they lose custody because I believe in a strong federal government that can take kids out of the home. If something's really terrible, I will double down so that maybe you'll get the fucking picture because you're still arguing with something you think I've agreed with and I haven't. I think that if you take your kids to a pageant, we
I
should
haven't
probably
really been
have
arguing with
So-
you all
child
night.
protective-
Like,
we should have child
be
protective
super- to be
services involved.
To be
So
clear,
I-
Stabby, wait, I want to be super clear real quick. So Stabby, I'm sure you know the Drag Your Kids to Pride event that we've been talking about. I'm sure you've seen the video. Are you saying that those parents should have to have their children taken away from them?
I think CPS should be involved. Just like
No,
we
be,
would get
be,
CPS
be clear.
involved.
Do you think not just involved, not just asking questions? Do you think they should have their children taken away?
Well, you can't just take children away, even if we know that the
Don't-
parents are
don't-
spanking
don't
them.
be
It's an
silly.
investigation.
Well, you can
No, I'm not
easily.
being silly. This is literally
They
how
should
it
be
begins.
investigating, right? The CPS should
C-
be there
hold on,
investigating.
They could
CPS
potentially take
CPS
their kid away.
I
C-
believe it.
Pretty basic.
Take them to Toddlers and Tiaras. Take them to Miss America. Take them to any of these fucking things. Take them to a strip club.
Okay,
Listen,
I'm
you
gonna go
take your
further.
kid to a strip club, you should lose your kid.
Okay, cool. So I want to go a
Yeah, the
little
right
further.
wingers heard you, they wouldn't be doing this.
So another big thing on the right, is that sometimes parents will take their children to pride events, right? Pride parades. And sometimes at some of these events, there's like sexual shit going on, like BDSM shit. People walking around with like dog masks and shit, or with their dicks out, or with dildos all over them and shit like this. Do you think that those parents should have their children taken away?
No, because they're at a parade, and I don't think that should have been
What?
allowed at the parade. No, I don't. If you're taking them to the
But
actual
if
event,
the parade is allowing this and the parents taking them there, why shouldn't they take the kids away?
when you're at a parade and something crazy happens, like a woman's shirt blows up or something, like I'm sorry, you're at the
Isn't
parade.
it the parents'
it's in a public
responsibility
They
to
know
make
it's
sure
gonna
that
happen.
there's no like
They know it's
BDSM
gonna
float
happen.
at the parade? Like
Kink
isn't it pa-
at Pride is like not like a secret.
I also take my kids to the marching bands here for those parades, and those girls are dressed in almost nothing in the middle of December.
Do
for
they
kids.
advertise kink at marching band?
The
Alright,
They're-
point
Why are
is
they
they're
always
we're talking
dressed
about.
in nothing in
Little-
December?
So
I have a question and you can shut me
wanna.
up.
Okay, so I
There's this
wanna.
one Santa baby. Wait,
I
there's this
want
one
to. I want
Santa-
to. Sorry. I want to move on to Jangles for a second. And Jangles, I wanted to like bolster one of your points, right? Because it seems like the other side here keeps abstracting themselves. Right? They're accusing us of doing this, but that's what they're doing, right? Like Stabby is right. We're here to talk about a nightclub shooting, right? But they keep abstracting back. Hey, why don't we talk about the rhetoric, right? That seems to be a good place to start. That's where the question was based off. Well, let's instead, why don't we talk about the larger context of people having gender ideology, right? And then they go attract again because well, there's a drag show somewhere in the world, so that might mean that you can use eliminationist language, right? To talk about trans individuals. I see you. I see what you're doing because you're running away.
We're
Running
conspiracy
it's
theorists now. You
eliminationist
brought
language.
on
It's
Jangles to have
absolutely
this conversation.
eliminationist language to say that people are pedophiles, right? And like that's like the heart of all this. And then it's like, well, but someone
The
somewhere
only person
like
that
had
called a
a drag
pedophile is
a kid
Gail
to.
Rubin.
So let's go to Jangles. Go ahead.
I'm going to walk
You know?
you through my thought process in 3 steps, all right? Now, if your 5-year-old watches a movie in which a princess gets married to a boy and they have a wedding at the end, I don't think anyone would call that indoctrination or grooming. However, if you show that same 5-year-old the exact same movie, but now it's 2 men getting married and kissing at the end of the movie, I think people like Scott would call that some sort of they would call that grooming. The only difference there is the presence of a queer identity, which you inherently see as sexual, as evidenced by the fact that the exact same circumstances are seen as sexual because they were queer, when you did not find them sexual when they were cis heteronormative. And because of this distinction, the automatic association with queer identities as sexual deviants, it is justifiable to call them pedophiles. And pedophiles are the most loathed people in society, and it's often justified both on the right and the left to use violence against them. And when you have that violent rhetoric built upon those steps I just mentioned, it is very reasonably going to lead to people dealing with the problem.
Let me address this because he's accusing me of stochastic terrorism throughout this.
Okay, and then also want to get deeper.
So real quick, I actually do have an example of this. I don't know if I can find clips of it, but when talking about the film Onward, right, where I made fun of conservatives for freaking out about the fact that there was supposedly like this like LGBT indoctrination in the film Onward, and I watched it with my kids, and it was literally just one female, obviously female police officer that was like, oh, my girlfriend with her kid, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this? Like, this is just telling a story in a fantasy world where LGBTQ representation is there. I have no problem with LGBTQ representation. You assumed bigotry and then attempted to paint me with that brush as a means, and then changed grooming from the definition that I gave you into pedophilia so you've like changed 2 different middle terms and assumptions as a means of trying to
What part of my thought
paint me out.
process, though? What part of my thought
Yeah, I
process
just
was wrong?
explained 2. I just
You
explained
didn't.
2 of them that was wrong.
All right,
right?
so let's
The
start
fir-
with the first
the
one. Do you
fir-
disagree?
The first one.
Do you think?
The
Okay,
first one. The
will
first
you?
one
Do
that
you
was a
think?
lie was an assumption that I would call 2 people getting married some form of sexual interaction, and that I would paint it with this critical gender theory just because there's LGBTQ representation.
Would you call it
And what I
grooming? Would you call it indoctrination?
I
Those
mean,
2 movies. You
like
could. If I'm wrong,
just
if I'm wrong, you tell me.
marriage. No, I have no problem with that.
So you have
I have
man
I
and
have
man
no
getting
problem with
married, showing it to a 5-year-old, and that's fine.
I have
You
no
think that's
problem.
fine?
I have no problem
You
with
think
like.
it's fine?
As a matter of fact, I actually have a little bit of an issue with Sleeping Beauty because it's a little bit creepy that the 16-year-old is like marrying a 26-year-old, and it's like it's a little bit strange to me. But like it's one of the
We
movies
didn't
that
have
they passed out to. So
yeah,
I'm
and
like, all right,
but
well,
we're all
whatever.
but
To
only
lighten,
now are we freaking out about
to lighten the
sexualizing
mood,
kids. It was
really
done to straight
quickly,
kids
to lighten the
that
Oh
whole
mood,
no,
I
no,
time.
no!
just want
You tried to paint the brush as a bigot and then tried to call me a stochastic terrorist, but you're really just a fucking coward that has run away from every
to
fucking argument that I've thrown at you and destroyed you in this idea that
You've
like
owned
you
me
that
in the
that,
in the
that there's
battlefield of
no examples
ideas.
of critical gender theory or in grooming,
You've
and all you're doing is
demonstrated
trying to
consistently
change
that it's the
definition.
queer thing making it sexual. All right, so
I have
you
not.
just answer.
Oh
Just
my
all
god!
right,
Oh
yes or
my
no?
god! This
Just
room temperature IQ of you
dude.
fucking
Okay,
doing
answer.
everything you
Can
can.
you answer the question yes or no? You're fine. So the movie with the man and a woman wedding shown to 5-year-old, and the movie with the man and a man with wedding kiss showed to 5-year-old. You're fine with those 2 things. One is not sexual. The second one isn't sexual. It's not
I mean,
indoctrination.
all other things being
Yes
equal,
or
yeah, I'm
no?
perfectly fine with it. Yes.
You're fine with it, and it's not indoctrination, and then you destroyed my point. Okay, cool.
Can I
Let's
respond?
I made an assumption about
Doobie.
you, and I'm sorry, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that a lot of people do think that way.
Doobie?
So I think we need to be like super honest about what's happening, because there is like a such thing as like cultural indoctrination or societal indoctrination, right? So, and we can see it when it like specifically with the LGBT stuff, right? When you just look at the rates of people who identify as LGBT and like compare them generation by generation, the rate of LGBT people in Gen Z has fucking exploded, right? Compared to like prior generations.
And
you
why
can
do you
also
think that is?
Hold on 1 second. So you're going to say it's because they're more comfortable now. So it's just, they would have been in LGBT anyway. So yada, yada. I understand. But that doesn't really work because if you look at children who are adopted by lesbian parents, for example, you'll find that they're far, far, far more likely than even Gen Z, far more likely than the rest of the population, up to like, I think it's like 56%, to identify as not cis when they're adults. Right? They identify as LGBT. Yeah. So they identify as LGBT in some form when they're adults if they've been raised by two lesbian parents. Right. So I think we just got to be honest and say that, hey, sexuality, you're not born like with a certain sexual identity typically, right? I think our understanding of sexuality
But
is
then you're
that, hey,
saying that
please
kids
stop.
aren't talking.
Let him get it. To be.
Yeah, so to be clear, yeah, part of the cultural indoctrination.
I'm listening. I'm gonna take a leak.
Can be straightness. There might be kids who would have been who might have been like coded to be like a gay or lesbian or whatever, who end up as straight just because they never see being gay presented as like an option. Right? So they just live.
You're making a lot of erroneous assumptions there.
Apparently
Like,
it's
no,
one
that's
to
fine.
five
Really
for Gen
quickly.
Z now. One to
Please, really quick.
35.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
really
you're
quick.
making
Really
it,
quick.
no, you're
Wait,
making this. No, you're making.
wait,
You're saying that you can
Let me say the wrong
turn
thing.
someone.
Let me say the wrong
You're saying
thing.
you can
Okay,
turn
let me
someone.
say the wrong thing, then you can correct me.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that you can turn a person one way. I'm saying that children aren't born gay or straight, right? So far as I've been able to find in all the fucking reading I've done on this. Right?
And you're incorrect. Hold on, you're incorrect.
Wait, hold on. Do you think that
we are not
people are
blank
just born
slates.
gay?
Well, let me ask the question.
Because my
Doobie,
understanding,
please.
everything that I've been able to find about this is it's genetics, but it's also your environment when you're growing up, the culture around you, which is why if we want to get like really weird, in nations, we can use something as like as weird as like Greek society, right? If you want to be like
You're
super
subscribing
weird,
to like blanks. No, you're
no, I'm not.
You're subscribing
No, I'm
to
not.
blank slate theory.
I'm saying that there is some genetic. I'm saying that there is some genetic influence, right? That so you're not a totally blank slate. So that genetic influence might make you more likely to be straight or gay or lesbian or whatever the fuck, right? But there is an impact from the society that you're in, from the things that you're exposed to as a child, even in the fucking womb.
Now you're repeating yourself. I think I get your points, but it's just incorrect. And it actually further
Are you
illustrates
really
my
going
point.
are you really going to
No,
pretend like this is
this
settled
blank
science where that, like
slate-
sexual imprinting doesn't exist?
Sexual
Like, this is silly.
like you think you can like we're blank slates and you can turn a kid straight or gay based
He's
on
literally
just how
never
you raised
said that.
He's insinuating that you can make a massive change. Yes, social factors do influence a child's sexuality, but a lot of that is repression. And so, if you repress sexual, if you
where does that come from?
all right, if you say you're making the insinuation that you can lean someone to identify as straight or gay based on societal circumstances, am I mistaken?
You realize it's sexuality.
I'm talking to Doobie. I'm talking to Doobie. I'm talking to Doobie.
I'm
talking to Doobie.
I'm saying that if you have a child, right, and you raise this child in an environment where LGBTQ expression and lifestyles and sexuality is accepted and common, that child is much more likely to be LGBT themselves. Far more likely than I think is you're gonna find in even other like very accepting societies. If you're raised by two parents, and I need to
respond.
I can send you the study. I can send you the study.
I need you to respond to this point.
Identifying as not straight. Right? So there is some influence.
You say a lot. You say 15 different points, and I wanted to address the first one. And by the time you get done, it's like all the way back here. So, all right. So I'm not. So there's no moral weight. You're not saying this is a bad thing, but yeah, if a kid is born into a family that is really accepting of LGBT, they're probably going to be more likely to be LGBT. Is that? I'm not saying
there is a moral weight, but specifically on the trans thing. On the other, on being gay or straight, I don't think.
Yeah, and the trans. Okay, and they're accepting the trans.
No,
I wasn't halfway done with my point.
Neither was he when you interrupted.
Okay. Oh boy.
I'm saying that it is bad to present like transness or gender fluidity as an option to your child because this will confuse them. I think this is a bad thing.
Okay, Jengis, respond. And Corey, I do see your head.
The second half of the point was if you turn them into that, like if you said okay, now you've like flipped it. Now it's just about trans people. We were talking about sexuality. I don't know why you flipped it to that. I'm going to keep it on sexuality.
Okay.
I'm going to keep it in sexuality because we were talking about sexuality. So you've made this assertion that if you you can grow up in depending on your environment, you can be more likely to be gay or more likely to be straight. How about that? Just that. Is that an accurate summation of what you said? Depending
Sure.
on your
But
environment.
I think there is a genetic influence there, along with the environment.
Yeah, genetic
environmental.
influence. Because so
Yeah.
there's a genetic influence, and the environment can make you lean one way or another based on the environment.
Sure. Yeah.
So when we were doing that for the past like 50, 60, 100, 500 years, we were doing that to the straight side. That's not indoctrination. No grooming involved. No sinister plots. And then now that we're
that is
allowing a little bit of
no.
gay.
Yeah.
No,
what I said earlier is that is
no,
cultural indoctrination.
You're missing a principal element. What makes it grooming and what makes it, you want to switch to indoctrination because you think that grooming must be pedophilia. So I'll use your term, right? Indoctrination, right? But the key element here, and this is why you're pivoting to indoctrination, is that it's not just the indoctrination. It's
not pivoting to indoctrination. The entire argument we've been having is about indoctrination.
It's about the grooming aspect because it is
that's indoctrination. It's not indoctrination. No, it's indoctrination.
No, you're trying to equivocate these two things, and then you're trying to say that grooming is pedophilia. What makes the reason that the right is using this grooming term is because you're separating people from parents. Parents are the individuals that are the most knowledgeable about their children. They are the default guardians of their children. They care by default the most. Now, obviously, some parents are shitty and don't care, but far more than like a random teacher or anybody else about the children. It is about bringing them into a system, okay, that has a philosophy that wants to teach them about all kinds of other things that are indeed deviant. We can say whether or not that's like good or bad, but deviant in some capacity. But nevertheless, when you're talking about parents letting their children watch a princess movie, yes, there is some level of indoctrination that happens through culture, that's socialization, right? That's what you do. You teach your kids to grow up in the world that they live in. But when you are separating children and love bombing them away from them and telling them to keep secrets from their parents and putting up closets in the room so that when you have your boy clothes, you can switch into your girl clothes and your parents never need to know. That is the issue, because you also like to sneak in the difference between sexuality and sexual identity, because there are individuals that are born assigned male at birth, right? That are attracted to females, and they get into this cult and they start saying, "Well, I'm non-binary," and it's like, but they're not androgynous in any capacity before they got into this cult. Their sexuality is just that of a cis person, and they identify within large groups. And before you know it, there are individuals like Chloe Cole that fall into this fucking cult, end up getting a double mastectomy, and then they're fucking 18 years old and realize that the fucking cult fucked them over in their bodies. That's what people are fucking angry about.
You always do that thing though, where you have this like grand fucking design and this crazy thing, but you've tried to pull this to this to this to this to this.
You absolutely
and
have.
you always
It's
do
not
that.
my fault that you can't follow me, honey.
No, we did follow you.
No, sweetie.
She was pointing out how she was following you from this inane point to
you
some
do it
grand
every single
conspiracy.
time. Besides, when you're gonna sit there and say that gay kids are more like people who grow up in same-sex couple households, and you're going to say that that's a version of indoctrination, all y'all are gay, fucking eat it, because you were indoctrinated to be straight. No, I'm just
Corey.
kidding.
But
if I
I'm super open about my sexuality.
if I can just ask really quickly, why are we making sure it's almost like it's banned on this stream entirely? Why are we making sure that we cannot say that it's bad that gay people got shot? I'm making we have made sure to not talk about this.
Literally, no one is saying that stupid ass.
Right,
point.
No one's saying it's not bad
Why are we
that gay
talking
people
about
got
this?
shot. I specifically,
why are we not talking about the shooting? Can I ask that question?
I don't know, but I
PrimeCayes brought
specifically-
Jangles
I
on to derail it.
Because we all agree that it was bad, right?
No, hold on a second, though.
Now we're talking about the
I
underlying
specifically-
rhetoric.
Wait,
I specifically
hold on.
stated and asked the rest of the panelists to talk about this shooting in theoreticals because it's simple. We don't have the
We
facts.
don't know the motive. Yeah, we don't.
Right, and
Yeah,
I
but even if you go, even if you
after the
step
fact,
back,
He was charged with hate crimes. He was
Even
charged
if
with hate
you-
crimes. I think we
even-
can ascertain the motive. Take a stab at
iCal
it.
wants to say something.
No,
Yeah,
you
again,
can't.
we don't
like
know the
literally,
facts.
they literally Vasquez literally came out and said that we're
You
doing
just
this
finished
because
the
it
word.
appears it might be motivated based
I
upon
go.
the target.
You wanted to say
yes,
something?
yes. Listen, even if we step back and we ask the most obvious question, which is if we're not talking about just the shooting, but if we're talking about why is there a spate of violence against LGBTQ communities, I mean, we can talk. We can go back and talk. Start with Pulse if we want, or go through all the individual instances that have come up over the years. If we were to ask that question, it still would devolve into, oh, it's because of all this trans ideology, like it's their fault. And it almost sounds like, I know that's not the intent of anybody on this panel, but it almost sounds like that the victims of these shootings were asking for it, like that they're the ones to blame. And I know that's not what people mean, but it absolutely can come across that way based on how this whole panel has gone so far.
Corey.
Yeah, so Doobie, I want to so you brought up earlier the statistic, and I'll grant it as true. I'll take your word for it. Where
I
it's
can
like, yeah,
post it for you in the chat if you want.
oh no, I believe you. But where, yeah, like children who grow up in whatever, I think you specifically said lesbian households are more likely to turn out gay themselves. So even if I grant that, I'll take your word for it. Like, what's wrong with that? Since as far as I could tell, like children who grow up in lesbian households have just as equally good outcomes.
Nothing.
As
Nothing's wrong with that. So to be clear, I'm not against that happening. I think that's totally fine. What
So-
I'm opposed to is this happening when it comes to like transness and like gender fluidity. Not because I dislike trans people. I have no issues with trans people. My issue is that I think children are very what's the word I'm looking for? Impressionable,
Malleable.
very easily confused when it comes to these issues, especially when it's coming from an authority figure. And there's a whole fucking host of comorbid mental health issues that come along with that. Right. And I'd like there to be less of these trans people, not because I dislike them, but because I want people to be healthy. Right. So that's why I don't have an issue with gay people or trans people or lesbian people. I don't give a fuck that if you're raised in a lesbian household, your kids you're more likely to be gay or lesbian or whatever the fuck. I don't care. I have no issue with that.
so
Can we talk about the
one
health
more thing.
people?
One more
Michael,
thing. One
look
more
at
thing.
the
It's really
link
quick.
I posted
So,
in the chat, by the
Corey, to be super clear, the reason I made that point is just to point out that I think pretty like the obvious fact that there is some impact from your environment, right? And we can see that in the outcomes of these households.
yeah, totally. But just to sort of clarify your position, like you don't want to potentially increase the likelihood that someone comes out as trans because of the associated potential negative outcomes that you perceive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But could maybe part of the potential negative outcomes associated with it be due to like stigmatization and the lack of acceptance of these?
Well, hold on.
individuals?
It's not that I don't accept them. Of course, I accept them. I don't think they should be stigmatized or treated badly in any way. The issue is that because we don't just have a button you can press to like swap like genders or bodies or whatever. There's going to be these people are going to have harder lives than I'd like my kid to have, right? So if I'm raising a child, I don't want them to go into school where they're going to be confused about their gender.
Okay.
So okay, we've gone over time, so we'll leave it here. And you can, if you have anything else to say, you can add it in your outro. But thanks all for this. Has been a lot of fun. I'm gonna give an outro to all these great individuals, but we're gonna have open walk on panel. So they're talking about trans stuff. So of course the chat is extremely active, as you guys always are. People love trans. They just cannot stop talking about them. So we're gonna have a walk on panel. We can continue the conversation there if you'd like. We'd love to have you. Right? Hit follow the channel if you haven't done so yet. Follow this channel. Make sure notifications are on so you're not going live. Do this all the time. It's up on social media. We got Twitter. We'll retweet Discord, where everything happens, including that walk on panel, which is happening soon. TikTok, YouTube's where you find the bots. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, I'm gonna give an outro. All the great individuals. But remember, more content is coming your way, so stick around for that. Lactoid, thanks for coming through and being part of this. It's been a lot of fun, friend. It was actually a pretty good fight. So thank you.
No, thank you. Moral of the story is that free market good, killing people is bad. Nobody here defended it, obviously. I think nobody that's important is defending it, and nobody should defend it. I just want to quickly. I know it might seem a little bit tangential, but there is some evidence, and I posted in chat, and I'll post it to anybody who wants it. There's some evidence that the Pulse nightclub shooting actually wasn't a hate crime in the sense that it was targeted against LGBTQ people, but that in reality, the motivations were entirely geopolitical. That might be a little bit edgy, but I'm just finding this out today. Vox is not above being wrong, but that's where I got it from. If you like what I had to say, you could find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord and Twitch, or Anti-Com United on Twitter. Thank you.
I've actually heard a similar thing, that Pulse was not necessarily. It was just like kind of incidental. That he argued that one.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna bring it up because it's like another derailment and people would just probably freak out. But basically, he just Googled nightclub in Orlando, to find the nearest nightclub.
And when he got there, he asked where all the girls were. He didn't understand that it was a.
There is evidence to suggest that it just happened to be a gay nightclub.
Which is why I was trying to be very careful that we don't know the motive. It's like, it's unlikely, but like it's possible that maybe it was incidental that he targeted gay people, but we don't know. I just don't know anything yet. So fair enough. Lactoid, thanks so much. Okay,
maybe he shot because there were no women there. You know what I mean? Like maybe he just wanted to go to a nightclub armed, and then he was like, "There's no women
think it's
here."
likely? We'll put a bet on it.
Who fucking knows, man?
Protect the women.
Vox is usually pretty thorough. I'm sure. I'm pretty sure if we know the motive, it'll be in the article.
Oh yeah. Some OnlyFacts is saying that he was gay, and he might have been a patron. I know, like I said, I'm not even sure with the Pulse thing, right? Like I've heard that too. That some people say, well, he was a patron of the club, the Pulse nightclub, and he was actually gay.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That he was actually gay.
I heard the same thing.
The stated motivation was it was in response to the airstrikes on ISIS at the time.
Yeah. But he chose that specific place
credible.
because he was like struggling with his identity or whatever.
I don't know. But let's go to our friend Scott. Scott, thanks a ton. Even when you condescend to me, I'm still happy you're around.
Yeah, I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. We're an anarcho-capitalist duo stream. Catch us out, Fabian Liberty, pretty much everywhere. Yeah, that's all. YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Twitch.
Have you crossed that limit yet? Have you crossed like the YouTube? You're trying to get to a.
Oh yeah, I'm just waiting on YouTube to get back to me as whether or not we're.
But you made it.
Yeah, I made it. Thank you.
Congratulations
for everybody that helped. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Scott. Everyone, check out his content. That's good content. So we're very glad you're getting well.
And pretty soon, I'm currently working on a video on the narcissism of wokeness and how critical theory helps create covert, vulnerable, narcissistic personality disorder in its people. So if you want to understand why lefties are like so fucked and can't engage in reality, it is the mental illness that is created by being a leftoid and how that works. It should be fun.
That never
still working on the script.
Never ever change, friend. Okay, let's go.
I won't.
I know you
He's
won't.
really trying to make it hard for you to promote him.
I know, right? He's like, oh god.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say anything, but you brought it up, and I was just like, let me just dig it in a little bit. You know?
The modern world has nothing to be afraid of, so you have to make it up. I'm proud of you.
Iko.
Hi, I'm Iko Rich. I guess you can follow me on Twitter at this handle. That's about all I have. I just want to say that the only thing I just wanted to reiterate from the first topic was that hospitals are incentivized to be regulated, because the one regulation that started it all, in my opinion, EMTALA, which is the one that forces them to treat anyone who comes to them, as long as you buy into that obligation that hospitals have, then it makes sense that you would want to expand Medicaid and make sure that hospitals in rural areas get the maximum funding that they can get from their customers or patients. Really, treating patients as customers is what's at issue here. Then they should at least be able to generate as much revenue as they can so that they can stay in business without having to have like a large density of people surrounding them. It's also, one might say, discrimination against rural people, which is by definition discrimination against conservatives and discrimination against the elderly.
So much. Let's go to our friend Spartacus. Spartacus, thanks for stopping by. And fighting us in hospitals at least. So,
I
thanks,
mean,
buddy.
I honestly didn't have much to say when I was prepared to talk about the club, and it turned into a gender discussion in which I was unprepared and did not want to stick my nose into something that I was unprepared on. So, but with the hospitals, obviously, we heard what we had to say. I think that everyone deserves to have some kind of emergency aid near them to where it's easily accessible to them. And then on the club, like I said, the facts have not come out yet, and I do not think that the politicians are at fault in the same way that I don't think that certain politicians on both sides are at fault when they say we have to fight. I think at a certain point when you're pushing an agenda, when you're pushing like a political agenda, you're going to use certain words, you're going to use them in certain phrases that make it seem like you could twist them around to make them seem violent, or if you already have that kind of implemented in your mind to where you want to be violent, you could of course hear them as violent. And so I don't think the fault lies on the politicians. Instead, I think the fault lies on how divisive our country is currently, and I think the fault lies on how much we don't take care of our mentally ill. So I think those are the two biggest faults that led to this: is divisiveness and the mental illness in America.
Thank you so much. And I'm honestly sorry that the conversation turned that it wasn't. I swear to God, I didn't design the question for that. That's where we went. But yeah, sorry about that. And let's go to our friend Corey. Corey, thank you also for stopping by and putting up a great fight.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again. Always grateful. And yeah, to sum up, healthcare is not a consumer good; it's a public good. And for once, I agree with Lactoid. Killing and violence is bad. Never do it. And yeah, super great to be here. Even though it went a little bit off topic. I'm Corey Campbell. You can find me on twitch.tv, Corey Campbell84, Twitter, Instagram, literally is Corey Campbell. And thank you, Jangles, Doobie, Stabby. Always love you, Prime. Thank you, Sprouticus. Always a pleasure, Ico and Scott and Lactoid. Until next time.
All right.
Hey, Brian, can I just add? It just occurred to me. There's something about Corey that's always kind of struck me. A thought that struck me, but
Is he quiet?
Hey, unmute yourself in Discord.
I'm sorry.
The thought is nothing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say about Corey real quick. He something struck me about him that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Now I just realized it. Corey is a watcher.
A watcher, like Marvel?
Yeah, yeah.
That's. I take that as I appreciate that. I take that as high praise. At least I take that as high praise. Thank you so much.
Intended as such, yes.
From the comics, man, you have a massive head.
Yeah.
Is what he meant to say. Let's go.
No. That's not
what. Let's go to our friend Stabby. Stabby, thanks for coming through, and thanks for being brave in the face of Scott's gender oppression. Yeah.
I'm more of a man than Scott is, I promise. And I was born with a uterus. So I just want to let you guys know, when it comes to hospitals, it is a public good. I want you to go ahead if you're interested, if you want an absolutely stunning story that will keep you riveted for hours. There is a 25-year utter disaster known as AMR. What a lot of the EMS personnel who used to work for them did, and how they changed everything that we're doing now. Some of the amazing advancements. There's a cotton. It looks like a tampon. Everyone, hang on with me. There's this cotton filler that they use for bullet wounds. It's now used by the United States military, and a former EMS guy came up with this. So there's just an amazing heroic story there. So look up AMR if you guys ever want to see like a really great American, an American ideal and what came out of that ruin. It is a public concern. We need to make sure that we have them available. As for the shooting, I might have come in hot with the accusation that anything right-leaning has to ensure that we do not talk about the shooting itself. It went to a gender discussion again when we were talking about the rhetoric. So I'm again going to agree with everybody in the panel that the left-wing rhetoric could do the same, that we had panels about, oh, it's the wall for you and all of that. If you don't believe that the right is going to have this conversation with themselves like we did for the line them up against the wall Twitter idiots,
then I want you to try to become a part of the conversation. Please, again, go to freedhearts.org. Susan Friedman is doing everything in her power to make sure if you're an LGBTQ youth and you're having a crisis of faith, whether you become an atheist or not, she's there for you and she's going to tell you that Jesus still loves you and she's spreading an actual doctrine. I'm still not Christian, but I wish I'd met this woman sooner and it wouldn't have been so painful to stop being a Christian, and that whole process would have been so much easier. So if you're mourning right now, especially if you're from Colorado Springs, where I used to live, I know what it's like to live there. And I know that they have some resources in that city. So please reach out. Please get on there and be a part of their thing. They also have this like Bible verse thing that they'll send you. It always brightens my day, despite being atheist. So there's that. I will share my link tree for Stabby Stitches. I make doll clothes. I make sure that no textile waste exists from my home. And I make quilts and a lot of fun stuff. So if you guys like to see sewing journals or a woman in her fucking place where she belongs, you can come look at my Instagram because I do a wonderful job at Trad Arts. I just can also be a man and a soldier. So thank you guys so much for subscribing to Prime and for giving him those donations because I was having a really bad day with the boiler. You all rock. Love you all. I will see you next time.
Thank you so much, Stabby, like for everything, really. Thanks for putting up a fight. Next, we have a Dark Lord and Savior Doobie. Doobie, kind support of the community. Doobie, also a perennial pain in my ass. Doobie, thank you for coming through. And putting up the good fight. Or actually, the evil fight, honestly.
I feel like I need to point something out, but so there have been like multiple times in this panel, people made jokes or implied that reverends, priests, etc., were gonna like diddle your children, right? I'm actually a reverend. I don't know if you knew this, Prime, but I actually presided over my trans siblings' marriage like 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Mhm.
I'm actually like legitimately a reverend. I have a certificate and everything. Cost me $35. Okay?
I am too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will not diddle
Me
your
too.
children, I promise. Yeah, it's actually you can do it for free, but the certificate's like $35. I recommend you do it so you can see you're a reverend. But I will not diddle your children. Not all reverends are built the same. Okay. I'm Doobie. I love trans people and LGBT people and Jingle specifically. He's a really nice guy, even though I was mean to him on this panel. I help run the politics server on Discord, discord.gg/politics. We do AMAs, events. We have a New York legislator coming on this weekend, I think. It should be a shit show, a good shit show. The best and biggest political server on the Discord platform, like 72,000 people now. It's a great time, but people will be mean to you if you go there.
That's true. He's being honest with you. Thank you, Doobie. Expect for Doobie in chat for this link. And finally, our friend Jangles, who I like cajoled into coming on here. He said, Prime, I'm gonna be here for 30 minutes. I promise. Right? And here he is. He got sucked in. All right, he's
the
back.
Siren song of Prime.
Yes, exactly. So,
Yes.
Jangles, I do appreciate you being part of this.
Hi, I'm Jangles. I was indeed cajolled in here, and part of what cajolled me is Doobie, maybe in a joking way, saying they're coming for your kids, so what do you expect? Or something to that effect. And so, if you're talking about the shooting, I see a very clear link between they're coming for your kids, you got to take them out, you got to protect your kids, and they're the enemy, and then a very likely hate crime against LGBT people. So I wanted to start at the beginning of that as what does they're coming for your kids look like? Because a lot of the answers I got tonight and a lot of the answers I got, on Saturday were they're so tenuous as to be laughable. As if we're like tricking kids to be trans for some agenda that eventually destroys capitalism or whatever. It seems so esoteric to me, and I really want specifics, and that's why I derailed the conversation. Because I'm an evil man.
Okay, right.
I can give you any specifics you want, brother.
Okay, hey, let's do a one-on-one then.
Hit me up.
Get it up.
Don't let
I would watch it.
I'd moderate, but don't ever take any shit from Scott about like derailing conversations, right? Like that's his fucking bread and butter here, all right?
I just said that's what he did. I didn't say it was
The issue
necessarily
is the
bad.
government.
Right? You know what I mean? I didn't say like how dare you Jangles derail. I was just like you were like
Hey,
people were
that's
like, why are we not talking about the shooting? And I'm like, because Jangles came on here and was like, let's talk shit. Let's go.
Hey, that's a good
I hope I
point,
just
Prime. Is
explained
that
how I
I
went
don't.
from talking about that to the shooting. I hope I demonstrated the link there.
I suspect.
Well, there was a
they might
couple
tell us
broken
that
chains in there. You know, I got
nothing
you on
would
the
be
first one.
derailed if only we get rid of the state.
That's true. That's true. I think so.
We're
Right? It's
looking at
good.
this conversation through the lens of the state.
It's
Maybe
been
and testosterone would still be
it's
derailed
been
right around here.
intellectual theft. Okay, all right. So thank you all for being here. We are going to continue on to Open Walkout panel right after this. Any of you here can join us, but if not, that's okay.
Hey,
Thanks for the. Yep.
My bad.
Your
I
time,
thought I was
Chris.
muted. I thought I was muted. My bad.
No derailing from Scott ever.
I never derail because ANCAPs always make sure the trains run on time. All right. Calm down.
Oh my god, time, energy, and passion. I know they appreciate it. My audience just as much as fuck off. All right. Bye.